last week. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill you. So what I plan to do is do today's lesson and then do one more lesson to introduce to you quadratic formulas, which is actually important because I'm just looking towards next year. So I'll teach you this lesson, then I'll teach you quadratics, and then you'll have a quiz. And that's it. I'm done. All right. So that'll be all your work for this week. So, all right. So we talked about last week where we left off was we talked about completing the square, and I left an illustration up here on the board which says x squared plus 10x, and we realized what we had to do, and we didn't have to solve anything last week. We just had to set it all up. And so what we did, if you remember, we always multiplied the middle coefficient by a half, all right? We know half of 10 is 5, but just to show you, all right, 1/2 times 10, which equals 5. And then, whatever that answer was, we squared it. In this case, it's easy to square it, it's 25. So we are going to do x squared plus 10x plus 25. Then we had to break that down and factor it down, which was x plus 5, which is the same thing as x plus 5 squared. All right, that's what we did last week. Sometimes we had fractions involved in that, and if we did, it was not a big deal. Let me find one with the fraction here. If I do, let's do plus 4. That's a bad example. 3. All right. So if that's 3, remember we multiply it by a half. 1/2 times 3, which gives you 3/2, and then we squared it. So it would be x squared plus 3x plus 3/2 squared. Which, if you actually work that out, it would be 9/4. 3/2 times 3/2. But then we just broke that down. It was easy to leave it in that form because we needed x plus 3/2, or x plus 3/2 squared. All right, so that's what we did last week. We completed the square. Now, if you want to turn over to page 318, we're going to take this one step further, and we're going to solve the formula, or the equation, sorry, by completing the square. Solve by completing the square. All right, so that's what we're going to do now. So if you look over on page 318, let's read a few things while I erase the board here. And page 318, section 9.4, it says this. It says, to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square, add the constant determined in section 9.3. In other words, multiply it by a half and then square it. That gives you the constant. All right, so add that constant and to both sides of the equation, and then factor and then extract the root. This message will work for every quadratic equation. You can see the steps there on page 318. This is pretty simple, but just look at it real quick. So again, let's look at the rules up there at the top. All right, it says solving a quadratic equation by completing the square. Number 1, simplify the equation to the form ax squared plus bx equals -c. Number 2, divide both sides by a, so the quadratic coefficient is 1. In other words, we want whatever's next to your x squared to be 1. So if you have to divide it, we'll divide it. Number 3, square half the linear equation and add the square to both sides. There's where we have to figure out what the square is. All right, and then factor the left side of the equation and the right side, extract both sides, and you get your answer. Now, in perfect Abeka fashion, that's extremely confusing to read, but much more simpler to do. So if you look at the first one down there in the example, all right, it says here, let's read that little paragraph. The key step in squaring half the linear coefficient, adding the square to both sides of the equation. This is when the square is actually completed. Because the positive negative means that there is more than one solution, be sure to check every solution. So we have x squared plus 4x minus 7. X squared plus 4x minus 7 equals 0. Now, just looking at this, technically you would say before, about 2 weeks ago, you'd say there's no way to solve this. Hopefully now you get some ideas that there is. But there's nothing here that you can multiply that gives you 7 that subtracted will give you 4. Because it's only 7 times 1. So what you want to do is you want to get this into x squared plus 4x. We add 7, so it equals 7. All right? Now I want to complete the square. So everything we've been doing has been building blocks. So to complete the square, I multiply this by half. Half of 4 is 2. Then square it, which is 4. So x squared plus 4x plus 4. But whatever I did there, whatever I added there, I need to add over here. All right? So again, this step is what we did last week. I multiplied the numerical coefficient of the middle term by a half. Half of 4 is 2. And then I squared it. 2 times 2 is 4. Then, but whatever I added here, I had to add over here. So now I go over here, and I'm going to put x squared, I separate this into 2 binomials, and it's x plus 2, or x plus 2 squared. Because if I break this down backwards, FOIL it, it's x plus 2 and x plus 2. That's the whole point of finding a perfect square. So I have x plus 2 squared equals 7 plus 4 is 11. Now, to solve it, I got to find the square root of that to eliminate the square. That leaves me with just an x plus 2. But what I did there, I got to do here. Equals the square root of 11. Now, we don't know what the square root of 11 is, all right, but we do know it's going to have a positive negative. So to finish this question, I have x plus 2 equals the positive negative square root of 11. I subtract 2. X equals a negative 2, positive negative square root of 11. And that's the answer. All right, and you can look at the bottom of the page. I'm not going to go through all the steps of solving, but you can see the bottom of the page. They solved it, and it worked out perfectly both times. It equals 0. So, again, don't worry, we're going to do more, but you have to get it in this form, x squared plus whatever equals, by moving, if you have a constant, that's your just numerical coefficient. If you just have a number, all right, move it over here. Then break it down, factor it down by completing the square, which is what we did last week. Half that, then square it. Half of 4 is 2, squared is 4. But whatever you put here, you got it over here. Which leaves us then, factor that down as x plus 2 squared, find the square root, and then x plus 2 equals positive negative square root of 11, subtract 2. Remember, anytime you find a square root, it's going to be positive and negative, because every square root has a positive and negative. The square root of 16 is positive 4, but also it's negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. Positive 4 times positive 4 is 16. All right, so I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but I promise this is not difficult. I think you're going to catch on pretty quick here. The next one says x squared plus 5x minus 6. X squared plus 5x minus 6 equals 0. Now, I want to show you something here. You can just work this one out like we were using the 0 property. Right? Remember the 0 property? All right, this would be, because this one actually factors out, which would be x, it would be plus 6x minus 1. Because 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. Negative 1x, positive 6x is 5x. Then, using the 0 property, I'd have x plus 6 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0. So x is going to equal a negative 6, and x is going to equal 1. Remember that. I'm going to write it up here. So we have negative 6 and 1. But now they're going to show you that we can do the same problem using this method. So if we use this method, now you're going to, when I'm done, you're going to say, well, that's a whole lot harder. Well, with this one it is. But when they don't work out, you can't break it down. You have to do it this way. So, but it's going to show you it does the same thing. So I'm going to move this over here first because I don't want a number by itself. So I have x squared plus 5x. I add 6 equals 6. Then I have to finish the square. X squared plus 5x. All right, so I have to multiply the 5 times a half. So 1/2 times 5 gives me 5 over 2. Then I have to square it. So, but instead of writing 5 over 2, because I need to know what to add over here, I'm going to go ahead and multiply it 5 over 2. 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times 2 is 4. So plus 25 over 4. But whatever I added here, I got to add over here. 25 over 4. Now I know this can be broken down into x plus 5 over 2 and x plus 5 over 2. Because I know that's what I squared to get that. And to prove it, 5 over 2 plus 5 over 2 would be 10 over 2, which is 5. But in any case, I have this, which leads me to, that is x plus 5 over 2 squared. Equals, let's not forget this side over here, 4 goes into 25 6 times, so 6 1/4. 6 plus 6 1/4 would be 12 1/4. Or if I made that improper, because I'm going to have to eventually anyways, it'd be 4 times 12 is 48, plus 1, 49 over 4. Which I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that, because I'm going to have to square root it. So I'd have to put it back that way anyways. So then I square root this to get rid of that, which leaves me with x plus 5 over 2. But I have to square root this. Remember, when you square root a fraction, it's actually the same thing as you square root the top and you square root the bottom. What is the square root of 49? 7. What's the square root of 4? 2. Alright, so now I have x plus 5 over 2 equals 7 over 2. I'm going to continue over here so you can see it. Alright, so x plus 5 over 2 equals 7 over 2. Alright, so when I get to here, I get the x plus 5 over 2 equals the positive negative 7 over 2. Which basically, again, what this means, when you have the radical sign, it's easier, really. But we just have a whole number, so that means a positive 7 over 2 and a negative 7 over 2. And when you have the negatives, just always throw it up there with the top. It's easier. So then I come over here, and I have the positive 5, x plus 5 over 2 equals, all right, I'm going to do each of these, 7 over 2. But also x plus 5 over 2 equals a negative 7 over 2. Let's solve this one. I got to subtract 5 over 2, which leaves me with x equals, so I have 7 over 2 minus 5 over 2, which equals 2 over 2. 2 over 2 is equal to 1. Notice it's the same. Over here, I'm going to subtract 5 over 2, right? And so x equals negative 5 over 2. Negative 7 and a negative 5 is negative 12 over 2. Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6, which, same answers. So I know if you just take a step back and then look back at this board, you're like, what? All right? But it's not that difficult. You just got to go step by step by step. And this is that critical thinking, right? So, but we're solving by completing the square. So again, you have to get, going back, get this over to here, so where you have x squared or whatever plus 5x. The next step I'm going to show you is this has to be 1. See how that's understood 1? The next example is not going to be, so we have to get rid of that. Then after you do that, you find the perfect square. You complete the square, multiply it by half and squaring it. Whatever you write here, you write there. Then you have to find the square root, you're going to get the right answer. All right? I know it's a lot, all right? But, hey, it's the last week. You get through this, you're done. All right? The next example adds one more little curveball into it, then we can work some out. We have 2x squared minus 5x. 2x squared minus 5x plus 2. Plus 2 equals 0. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to get it to that first form by taking this constant over here. So now I have 2x squared minus 5x. I subtract 2 equals a negative 2. Now, the next step before I can solve anything is I have to make this a 1. All right? If you'll notice back on your instructions on page 318, the 6 steps, you want to simplify the equation, which we just did, and to divide both sides by a so that numerical coefficient's 1. So I need this to be 1. So a, remember this is the a, that's the b, that's the c. So I'm going to divide by 2. But in order, I can't just do something without affecting everything else in the equation. So I'm going to have to divide this by 2 and this by 2. Now that will eliminate that, which gives me just x squared minus 5 over 2x equals negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. All right? So now I have gotten this down to this point where I need. Now I can complete the square. You complete the square, x squared minus 5 over 2x, by multiplying this by a half. So 5 over 2 times 1/2, I should say negative, which would be 5 over 4, negative 5 over 4. Square this, negative 5 over 4 times negative 5 over 4, all right, would be a positive 25 over 16, all right, because multiply it by itself, negative 5 over 4, 25 over 16. But a negative times a negative is a positive. So plus 25 over 16. Whatever I did there, I got to do over here. Equals a negative 1 plus 25 over 16. Now, 16 goes into 25 one time with a remainder of 9 over 16. A positive 1 and negative 1 just leaves me with 9 over 16. All right? Because 1 minus 1. So now I'm at this point, x squared minus 5 over 2x plus 25 over 16 equals 9 over 16. Okay? I know. Rewind it if you need to. But again, I had negative 1. I had to add 25 over 16. And then 25 over 16 is the same as 1. And then the remainder of 9 over 16. I already had negative 1. So 1, this is third grade, 1 and 9/16 minus 1, this gives you 9/16. That's how I got that. All right, let's break this down now. Can you still see that? Barely. All right, so this is x and x, negative, negative, and then we know that's going to be 5 over 4. All right, which equals, make that into a square. So now I have x minus 5 over 4 squared, because it's just repeating, equals 9 over 16. I got to find the square root of this. I'm going to have to find the square root of that, which leaves me with x minus 5 over 4 equals the square root of 9 over the square root of 16. X minus 5 over 4 equals positive, negative, the square root of 9 is 3, square root of 16 is 4. We're almost done. All right, now I'm going to have to add 5/4 to get rid of it. But I have to do over here, which basically I'm going to have 2 problems. So I have x equals positive 3/4 plus 5 over 4, and x equals a negative 3/4 plus 5 over 4. 3/4 plus 5/4 is 8/4. 8/4 is 2. There's one of my answers. Negative 3 and a positive 5 is negative 2 over 4, which is negative 1/2. There's my second answer. So 2 and negative 1/2 are your 2 answers. I'm sorry, this is positive. Negative 3 and a 5 is a positive 2. Sorry about that. All right, so that's just 1/2, not a negative. I don't know why I put a negative there. So. Then again, look at that. All right. It can be intimidating, and I get it. All right. Take a deep breath. You do today's lesson, short little quiz. You're all done with this until probably 2021, right? But like I said, we're working towards the fact where we do one problem that takes an entire board. Remember I told you at the beginning of the year? All right. So again, take step by step. Let's do a few of these. All right. All right, page 320. Turn there real quick, and let's do number 1. All right, let me erase the board. I'll give you something to listen to while I erase the board. So the first one says x squared minus 6x equals 5. It's already in that form I need it. I don't need to move the constant over here. It already is. So now I have to complete the square. I complete the square by, again, all right, multiplying that by a half. So negative 6 times 1/2 equals negative 6 over 2, which would be negative 3. And then squaring that, negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, positive 9. But whatever I added there, I have to add over here. All right, that's my first step. I'm going to erase this little section because I'll need it. Now, I need to break this down into a perfect square. 5 plus 9 is 14. We know this is going to be x minus 3. X minus 3 times x minus 3 is x squared minus 6x plus 9. Then I have to find the square root of this, to get rid of that, which just leaves me with x minus 3. But I got to find the square root of this, equals the positive negative square root of 14. So then I just have to add 3 to get rid of this. And so x equals 3, because I added 3 over here, positive negative square root of 14. All right? That's it. Easy, right? All right. So, again, it was already in the form I needed. I didn't need to divide by anything because that was already a 1. So then I completed the square. Whatever I added here, I added over here. Factored it down to a perfect square. Did the square root. Left me with just x minus 3, positive negative square root of 14. Add 3 to both sides. I'm done. Next one, number 2. It says x squared plus 12x minus 4. X squared plus 12x minus 4 equals 0. Now again, the reason we're doing this is because you can't factor this down. There's nothing multiplied 4 times 1, 2 times 2, don't give you 12. So the first step is to get it into your first form, which would be x squared plus 12x. Since that was minus 4, I'm going to add 4, and it equals 4. All right? Then I'm going to complete the square. X squared plus 12x. To complete the square, I multiply the 12 times a half. 12 times a half is 6. Then I square 6. 6 times 6 is 36. So plus 36 equals 4. Whatever I added here, though, I got to add here. Now I'm going to find the perfect square of this. And 4 plus 36 is 40. The perfect square of this is x plus 6. Now I got to find the square root of that, square root of this. Which leaves me with just an x plus 6 equals positive negative, the square root of 40. Now, I can do some of this, remember from 3 weeks ago. The square root of 40, my factors of 40 are 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 4 times 10, and 5 times 8. Any of those perfect squares, the 4 times the 10. So the square root of 4 times 10, the square root of 4 is 2. So now I have x plus 6 equals positive negative 2 square root of 10. Then I just subtract the 6 to get rid of it. And x equals, can you see that still? Yes. All right, a negative 6 positive negative 2 square root of 10. All right. Now those are easy ones. All right, so let's jump down there towards the bottom. Let's do a couple of those. Okay. Do the bottom ones here. Number 24. All right. Number 24 says this. It says 3x squared minus 18x equals 10. All right, so step number 1 is to get it in the first form that we need it in by moving any constant over here. It's already done for us. So that's a good thing. So now I got to finish. No, second step is I need to make sure that this is 1. Right now it's not 1. All right, notice it's 3x squared. So to get rid of that, I have to divide it by itself. But what I do to that to make it 1, I got to do to everything else. So I'm going to divide this by 3, which will make that 1, but I got to divide this by 3 and this by 3. Which leaves me with x squared minus 6x, negative 18 divided by 3 is negative 6, equals 10 over 3. Can't really work that out yet. Now I'm going to complete the square by multiplying this by a half and then squaring it. So I multiply this by half is x squared. Half of negative 6 would be negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. Equals, but whatever I added there, I got to add right here. Now I'm going to find the perfect square here, which would be x minus 3 times x minus 3 equals, let's deal with this, 10 over 3 plus 9. All right, let's go ahead and make this proper. 3 goes into 10 3 times. So 3, that is the same as 3 and 1/3. 3 and 1/3 plus 9 is 12 and 1/3. Now let's put it back in proper. 3 times 12 is 36 plus 1. 37 over 3 is where we're at. Then I got to find the square root. I'm going to find the square root. All right, so we're at the point where it's x minus 3 equals the positive negative square root of 37 over 3, which, if you remember, I lost my chop. That's the same thing as x minus 3 equals positive negative square root of 37 over the square root of 3. Can you have a denominator as a radical? No. So you have to multiply it by itself to get rid of it. You loving this? All right. So I'm going to rewrite it down here to get rid of it. I have x, you can see that? Yep. X minus 3 equals positive negative square root of 37 over square root of 3. I'm going to multiply it by the square root of 3, but do the same thing over here, which gives me the square root of 9 over 3 times 37. 3 times 7 is 21, 2, and 111. Square root of 111. The square root of 9 is 3. So now I have x minus 3 equals positive negative, all right, square root of 111 over 3. All right, then I'm going to add 3, so x equals 3 plus minus the square root of 111 over 3 as my final answer. All right? So that's about as hard as they get, and we can assume, if I keep not losing my job, all right, that you'll be able to handle this. Let's go backwards a little bit. Let's do number, let's do number 16, right? Number 16 says 7x squared plus 14x. 7x squared plus 14x equals 35. All right, so it's already in the form I need, so now the next thing I need is divide by 7 to get rid of everything. So divide by 7, divide by 7, divide by 7. Which leaves me with x squared plus 2x equals 5. So this is nice. Then I have to complete the square. X squared plus 2x. I do that by multiplying that by a half. Half of 2 is 1. Squaring it, which is 1. What I ever add there, I got to add here. So now I break this down, which is going to be obviously x plus 1 times x plus 1 equals 6. Square root. Square root. I have x plus 1 equals positive negative square root of 6. Subtract 1. So my final answer is x equals a negative 1 positive negative square root of 6 because you can't do anything else with that 6. Right? So like I said, they get easier. Right? Let's do another one. Let's go back to number 15, and then I'm going to let you do the rest of these. All right? So number 24 was hard. I get it. All right? But the rest of these you should be good. But I just wanted to do it to show you it can be done. I'm not going to assign you those harder ones because I'm not here to help you more than this video. So number 15 says 4x squared plus 8x equals 4. All right. First thing you want to do is make sure that it's in the right form where you don't have any plain number by itself. Then you need to make sure this is 1. In this case, I'm going to divide by 4. And what I did there, I'm going to do to everything else. So that leaves me with x squared plus 2x equals 2. Now I need to finish the square, complete the square. I do that by multiplying this times a half. 1 half of 2 is 1. Then squaring it, so plus 1 equals 2 plus 1. Then I find the perfect square root. Perfect square. 2 plus 1 is 3. Obviously this is going to be x plus 1 times x plus 1. Square root. Square root. X plus 1 equals positive negative square root of 3. Subtract 1, so x is going to equal negative 1 positive negative square root of 3. All right. Jumping back up to the easier ones, let's do number 3. Hopefully you wrote all these answers down that we did together. Number 3 says x squared plus 10x equals 9. X squared, you know what, let's do 5 instead, right? It's a little bit different. Number 5 says x squared plus 2x minus 9. X squared plus 2x minus 9 equals 0. All right? So the first thing I want to do is get it in the right form by moving the number over there. So x squared plus 2x equals 9, because I added 9. Now I need to make sure this is 1, which it is. Now I complete the square. X squared plus 2x, half of 2 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So plus 1 equals 9 plus 1, because whatever I did there, I got to add there. A lot of times when people do these, they forget that step. Then, perfect square of this will be x plus 1 times x plus 1. Square root, square root. X plus 1 equals positive negative square root of 10. Minus 1. X equals a negative 1 positive negative square root of 10. All right, so I'm going to stop there. All right, I know this is a longer video, right? But I'm eliminating an entire day this week. So, basically count this as 2 days if you want. All right, so I want you to do, for homework, numbers 1 through 16. All right, 1 through 16, and then number 17 will be a bonus. All right. Make sure when you do the homework, next to number 17, put a star by it so I am reminded that that was a bonus. But 1 through 16, and then do number 17 as the bonus. So again, if you have to, just go back and kind of fast forward and watch through this. But the steps are right there given on page 318, but you want to get it into the form to where you have x squared and an x and then a number over here. Then you complete the square. Whatever you write to complete the square, write it over here too. Find that perfect square binomial, square root it, square root both sides, and then get x by itself. Okay? So do that. Numbers 1 through 16, bonus number 17. And then one more lesson. And the lesson will be on quadratic equations, which sometimes you have to do it a different way. This is a quadratic. We have to do it. There's one other step, which you need to know. All All right, and so I want to do that lesson. Then there's a quiz and you're done. All right, so adios.